Hey, everybody, I'm Kelli Thompson. I'm a women's leadership coach. Today, we're talking about how to define your leadership style and why does it matter? I believe in working with my clients that defining your leadership style ultimately helps you lead with more confidence. So, let me just kind of ask you a question and whether you're watching this live or you're watching this on replay, I want you to tell me, like, when you think about what is an ideal leadership style, what comes to mind for you? And just kind of notice some of the first few words that come into your mind. Maybe it's strategic, maybe it's direct, maybe it's empathetic. My hunch is that you're getting a whole host of words about what defines an ideal leadership style based on what you've always been told. Perhaps it came from your family of origin. Perhaps it came from what was told to you in your current organization based on what they value. I know a lot of times when I'm working with clients, when we start talking about this, about defining their leadership style, one of the things that they talk about is they usually give me a few words. Like, I want to be, you know, um, gregarious, humorous. I want to be direct. I want to be strategic. I want to be a good storyteller. I mean, it could be, I want to be sensitive. I want to be curious. I mean, all these things come up. And then my next question for them is I ask them, well, why do you want that? Like, why do you believe that that's the ideal leadership style? And I would say, in a good chunk of the time, the answer is, well, there's another, especially for women who are often underrepresented in senior leadership. There's this other woman leader at work who, leads this way, and she gets really good results. And so I guess it's just kind of, what I also aspire to be. And I think that admiration can be helpful in helping us kind of define what we admire in others, because what we admire in others oftentimes gives us clues to the things that we want to cultivate in ourselves. We also have to be careful that we're not just copying someone else's leadership styles, thinking that that's also going to give us the same results. Because what often happens, and I'll just share my own story. I remember as a young leader, I was working in banking. It was about 2008-ish timeframe. Of course, we were, in the big recession, and I was just coming into leadership, and there were very few women at the top for which I could look up to and, kind of really start to think about what I wanted my leadership style to be. However, there was this one individual that I worked with. And I guess I just always admired how she always just seemed to have the right thing to say at the right time. She was super extroverted. She just was very participatory in meetings, gregarious, chatty, charming, all of these things. And I'm not that way. It might be different because you're only seeing me for snippets live on social media, but I'm actually quite introverted. And I think of all the good things to say about 3 hours after the meeting where I'm like, "Oh, I should have said this." So I don't know, give me a heart or a like if that is also you, because that's me. I'm like leaving the meeting and then like 3 hours later, I'm like, "Oh man, I should have said that." I just didn't feel like I always had the right words at the right time. I was a lot more contemplative than she was. She was a lot more assertive, and what I found myself is I kind of got myself into this compare and despair thing, and that I was trying to be more like her. But the thing is like that wasn't really all that effective. I actually just showed up a lot more awkward because I was trying to be somebody who I'm not. So I don't know. I mean, tell me in the comments or give me a heart or a like. Like, has this ever happened to you where you feel like maybe you're trying to model someone else's leadership style? And although well intentioned because you want it to get you the results that you're looking for, it actually kind of backfires a little bit and just makes you show up a little less authentic, a little unlike yourself, a little awkward, because I know that's the experience that I've had. And so as I started to accelerate in my career in leadership, and as especially the higher up I went in organizations, the more I had to really embrace those things about me and my style that were unique. So that, one, I would stop comparing and despairing, because that was a really big confidence killer. But two, I had to have a set of values or guardrails or like a certain style of leadership, a certain like grounding that I could fall back on, for which I could make decisions every day. Because here's the thing that I've learned through my time, as a senior leader in a technology company. I oversaw human resources. I saw this in my time working for a leadership development organization when I was traveling around and doing leadership development training for organizations. And especially in my business today, because I'm the sole decision maker, right? I'm the boss. Every time I check with my boss, she says it's okay because it's me. I had to learn that I had to live by a certain set of values that would help me make my decisions, help me guide the way that I treated my team, my contractors, my clients, and ultimately kind of served as kind of my compass for yes and no decisions. And that ultimately became my leadership style. So, because here's the thing, when you, no matter whether you are in corporate or you are running your own business, tell me a yes or give me a heart or a like if you agree. But there are going to be so many opinions on what coming from other people, well intentioned, on what they think you should do. You're going to get lots of well meaning advice for how you should make decisions, how you should run your team, how you should move forward in communicating a certain thing. There are so many experts. There's lots of influencers in the world today. There's just so many opinions and so much noise on what you should do and how you should lead. And the higher up you go in leadership, the more exposure you're going to have to higher level decisions about your team, about making hiring and firing decisions, how you're going to roll out a complex initiative, how you're going to lead change, how you're going to share good news and bad news in your team, right? Because we can't always have good news, which is kind of a bummer, right? And so it becomes really important that you have a set of values or a leadership style that you fall back on so that when you come into challenging times as a leader, you can have a set of guidance principles. You can kind of have a set of rules or a way that you make decisions, a way that you communicate something, a way that you lead your team. And I'm going to give you some questions to help you determine what this leadership style is so that you can kind of find something for yourself. So again, it's really important that you claim your unique leadership style and not just copy someone else's. One, because it's going to reduce compare and despair. And two, it'll help you show up as your most authentic version of you. And it just makes leading a whole lot easier when you're showing up as yourself. So let me give you 4 questions that I learned to ask. And then these are the questions that I ask my clients as we're really trying to define what their unique leadership style is for those 2 purposes. One, so they can show up and lead with confidence, knowing they're showing up as themselves. And 2, it gives them a set of guide rails, a set of values, so that when they have to make tough calls, when they have to make tough decisions, when they have to communicate out, good and challenging communication, they have a way that they know how to do this, or a style that they know how to do this that feels unique and authentic to them. So question number 1 is this: what do you stand for as a leader? And I want you to just write down the first thing that comes to mind. You can share it in the comments if you'd like, whether you're watching this live or on replay. But what do you stand for as a leader? Like, what words come to mind when you think about what you stand for? I borrow this and I write this in my book. One of my favorite quotes from the Hamilton musical, which is one of my favorites, is when Alexander Hamilton says to Aaron Burr, he's like, if you don't know what you stand for, what will you fall for? And for me as a leader, especially as a human resources leader, where I had to have a lot of hard conversations and make a lot of tough calls, it was a really important, not only for me as a leader, but for me and my CEO and me and the organization to be very clear about what we stood for in terms of values, in terms of mission, in terms of, what sort of experience we wanted to create, so that we didn't just fall for anything, so that we didn't just say yes to the next attractive thing that came our way that looked like a fun, shiny object. It really helped us, articulate, nope, this is what we stand for. This is what we want to create, so that we weren't walking around falling for everything. So question number 1, what do you stand for? Question number 2, what are 3 words that you want people to use to describe you as a leader? And just notice what comes to mind. Like, if you got to overhear people talking about you at the water cooler or, in a Zoom chat room, what 3 words would you want people to use to describe your leadership style or to describe you as a leader? Those can give you some insights, those 3 words, as to what you value and to what your leadership style, what leadership style feels natural for you. And I'm going to give you an example of that here in a second. The third question is like, what are my career or my team non-negotiables? So like, what are the things that I expect in my career that I have to have in my career to be happy and effective? What are the things that I require of my team for you to be on my team, for you to join my team? Is it collaboration? Is it curiosity? Is it empathy? Like, start thinking of adjectives when you think of what are my non-negotiables, things that I need in my career from my employer, or things that I need from my team. So come up with some adjectives around that. And then question number 4, in challenging situations, what values do I lean on? And this is just another set of words to, really think back about when's the last time you made a really challenging decision. You had to communicate some challenging information. You had to make a courageous call. Maybe you had to revisit a decision or go back to someone and say, hey, this isn't going to work. You had to pivot your business. Like, what values, like, regardless of money and title and status and all that sort of stuff, like if all of that went away, like what are the values that you have to go back to as your foundation to make those really hard, tough decisions? For me, it's love and respect. Okay, how can I do this lovingly? How can I communicate this respectfully? So, like, those are like sometimes my grounding values. So the 4 questions were, what do you stand for as a leader? If you overheard people talking about you, what are three words that you would want them to use to describe your leadership style? What are your career or your team non-negotiables? What must you have to either be aligned in your career or for people to join your team? And number 4, what are the values that you fall back on in really challenging times? So the next step is, like, once you've answered all these, I want you to just kind of notice some words that are popping up in common. For me, my 5 core values are love, respect, family, creativity, and learning. So when I apply those to my leadership style and I use them to define my leadership style, in hard times, it was always, how do we communicate information lovingly and respectfully? I'm a very direct person. That's always been my greatest flaw and my greatest strength. And so for me, especially as when I was in corporate as an HR person, it was, how do we communicate this directly and lovingly, directly and respectfully, right? It's like blending my approach in alignment with my values. And that really helped me define my leadership style. I knew I could show up in that way and feel good about it without trying to copy someone else's style. As a leader, I always sought to be creative. And even running my own business today, I'm always looking for creative new ways, to infuse energy into my business. I always have a focus on learning. Like, I actually have a budget set aside for my own personal learning because it's that important to me. It was important to me working in corporate. It's important to me now as a business owner to have money set aside to always be learning. And now I don't have direct employees. I have a couple contractors that I work with, but we're always focused on learning. With my clients, it's always focused on learning. So those are some ways that you can weave this into your unique leadership style. So the last example I'll leave you with was a client that I worked with who I think did this really beautifully. Her and I were working together in a leadership coaching capacity. She had been promoted pretty quickly in her organization because she was just so dang good, right? She was one of those folks who, if something needed to get done, everybody wanted to give it to her because she just had this knack for not only being like really smooth with customers, but she just got things done. Like, she just was trusted to take really high stakes projects and deliver it with quality. Here's where her challenge came in. She was moving from more of an individual kind of a producing manager sort of role to when she got promoted into a VP sort of role. And she was really struggling because now in this VP sort of role, she was not only managing her peers, like people that she used to be peers with, which is a struggle in and of itself, but really struggling with the work-life balance because she was still the go-to person that everybody came for. Everybody wanted her on their committees. She was still kind of doing the work that she was doing when she was in her producing manager role. And it was really impacting her family time. And she wasn't getting home when she wanted to. So then she wasn't feeling as good as she wanted to feel. She wasn't spending the quality time, not only for herself, but her family. And so we really wanted to help her set some guardrails, because defining your leadership style in alignment with your values will help you know what yeses to give and what noes to give. It helps you define your right yeses and noes, no matter what is appealing, what's popular, or demanded of you. And so what we came up with for her through some of the questions that I asked that I gave you, and then through some other exercises that I run my clients through, was that her kind of 4 words that defined her leadership style was this: innovation. I want people to see me as an innovative leader. She wanted people to see her as an empathetic leader. She wanted people to see her as a humble leader. And they wanted her to see her as a leader who was very focused on her family, whether that was creating kind of a communal environment as a team, but also had good work life boundaries, that somebody who was committed to her family at home as well. That was really important for people to see her in that way. And so that became really helpful as kind of her compass, her line in the sand for which she said yes and no. Because remember, she was a peer, or she was now managing her peers. Plus, she was still kind of the go to person that people wanted on teams. They wanted her to come and sit in client calls to de escalate situations and all this sort of stuff. And so she was just overworked. She had a lot of unpaid workload. And so when she really used her value of innovation, one of the things that she learned to do is she says, if I am going to be an innovative leader, this means I need to focus on projects that are propelling innovation. And as much as I want to say yes to all those requests where I come and I sit in with a client, or I de escalate a situation, or I get on a certain project, like I had to start saying no to those things because they were detracting from my what I valued, my ability to be an innovative leader. And she just used that in her language. She would start to say things like, thank you so much for inviting me to participate in this project. One of the things that me and my team are really focused on is driving this innovation forward. So unfortunately, I can't attend because we need to spend our time focusing on this project. How about we talk about who might be a good person to come in and sit on this project instead of me? So she got really good at setting boundaries around being an innovative leader. When she thought about empathy and being an empathetic leader and having her peers see her, her former peers, she's now their boss, see her as that empathetic leader, she really had to embrace empathy and humility and just be honest with people and just say, I know sometimes it's a little weird that I was your peer and now I'm your boss. And so I want to sit down with you and talk with you about how you like to be managed. What's the best way I can be a leader for you? And then listen to their answers. And so it was a way for them to kind of re-level set their new working relationship by talking about what she expected from them and what they wanted to see from her, and just kind of brought that big elephant into the room out into the open that, yeah, I know it's kind of weird that we used to be peers and now I'm your leader. And ultimately, one of the things that benefited her the most was when she started to say no more often. She started to get more focused on how she could be an innovative leader. She started to set expectations and boundaries with her team. She had more time with her family. And so she was honoring her value of family, by getting home at a decent hour, by not having a bunch of work projects that she had to finish at home because she said yes. And so another way this can really work in your leadership styles, when she did have to communicate information, when she did have to make decisions, she would slow down and ask herself, what would be the innovative decision? What would be the humble decision? Or how can I communicate this decision with humility and empathy? How can I communicate this decision in an innovative new way? And so when she had her 4 words that described her leadership style, it not only gave her a guide for her right yeses and nos, but it also gave her a guide for how to communicate information, how to make decisions. Lots of times you can just turn those words into an adverb by adding ly at the end, kind of like I did with my 5 values. How do I do this? Lovingly, respectfully, with a focus on learning. I guess you can't say learningly, right? So, that's just a really good way that you can start to identify what is my leadership style. So, hopefully those questions were helpful for you in determining, after you answer those 4 questions, go back and see what you all have in common, and then start to ask yourself, are my daily leadership habits aligned with those leadership style words that that I believe are authentic to me? And, or if my habits aren't in alignment with those words, what do I need to change to bring my daily habits, my daily communication, my daily decisions more closely in line with the leadership style that I want to embrace based on those words that I've defined? So hopefully that is all helpful for you. And y'all, if you come back and you do the homework, share in the comments what your 4 words are. Or if you feel like you do a good job of it, give me a heart, give me a like, let me know. That would be awesome. One other thing I want to tell you before we leave is We have one more week left to get into my book club this summer. So I am partnering with Fable, which is an e-reader app. So think of like Kindle, only it's interactive and it's way cooler. So I'm partnering with Fable to do a book club plus group coaching course this summer. And so what we're going to do is we're going to read 3 books together. In June, we're going to read Reality-Based Leadership by Cy Wakeman. In July, we're going to read my book, Closing the Confidence Gap. So folks who join this book club plus group coaching course get access to my book 4 months early, because the hardcover of my book doesn't come out until November 1st. So if you're in this, you're going to get the e-version July 1st, which is super exciting. And then the book we're going to read in August is My Life in Full by Indra Nooyi, who is the former CEO of PepsiCo. So this isn't just a book club. So yes, we're going to be in there reading together. We're going to be engaging in online discussions together whenever it's convenient for you. But I'm also going to be in there leading group coaching sessions. So there's going to be a series of, I think, 5 webinars, some with experts, some with the authors. I know Cy Wakeman is going to be there for one of them, but I'm also going to be there hosting Q&A sessions and group coaching sessions where folks will have an opportunity to submit questions, and then I'll answer them for the group, and it'll be like a Zoom meeting, Zoom webinar. And if you have to miss it, don't worry, we'll record it so you can play it back at any time, so you won't miss anything. You can still submit the questions, and you don't have to be live to participate. I'll still answer, and you can watch the replay. So it's just $140 plus tax. So that's 3 months of the interaction, the group coaching that I'll be in there leading. I'll be in there leading book club discussions, and then that includes your books. So closingtheconfidencegap.com/book. You can get all the information. I'd love to see you in there, but we close it down on May 31st because we start on June 1st. So super excited. All right, everybody. Thanks for joining me this Tuesday. I will see you next week. Good luck. Let me know what comes of defining your leadership style. I want to hear from you, and I will see you all next week.